Maccabean period, they had a Messiah. And Jesus was viewed as just one pretender to the Messianic thing. And the criteria was so loose at the time. Look, you didn't have to be an Aaronite. You didn't have to be part of the house of David, right? Guess who their king was? Agrippa, Herod, an Edomite, who shouldn't have been allowed to be a Jew in the first place, right? According to Malachi and according to the Torah. So, pretty interesting situation. This also tells how, you know, you guys thought that the Romans just came swaggering in and took over, right? No, they didn't. They were asked in. Maccabees tells us how the Maccabean, what do we call these guys? Just came out of my brain. There was another name we called their dynasty. But in any case, how the Maccabeans asked the Spartans and the Greeks and the Romans to come in and help them fight the Seleucids and the Egyptians. And they even made alliances with the Egyptians against the Seleucid Empire and against other groups. So the Romans came in at the request of the Maccabeans. You thought they came in and conquered, right? Mm-hmm. They didn't come in and conquer. They were requested in. They were asked to come. And they happened to stay because the area was in such turmoil because of the, basically, Herod and all the kings. They were causing all kinds of issues you wouldn't believe. Plus the Seleucid Empire. I mean, I think I've gone through this history before with you, and I don't have time to go through the whole thing. But it's just the amount of infighting and fighting that went on within the houses, especially the kings, you know, the kings and the priests and all this stuff, was incredible. So, in any case, this is highly regarded by all historians. This is considered the most accurate source of information from this period. It's considered excellent history with no historical issues at all. So why have you read it? This is where Josephus got his history, to write the history of the Jewish people from this period. The reason the rabbis, this is why you don't have it, because remember the rabbis didn't like this. Well, in the Council of Jamnia, if that existed, you know, in 90 AD, approximately 100 AD, basically when the Jewish people set their canon, the rabbis set their canon, they excluded this text. Why did they exclude it? Well, they thought it was Greek because the Hebrew text had been lost. Jerome saw it, but the rabbis apparently didn't. It's also a Greek-style document. Remember I told you, we're moving from a derash to a pishat, or a derash to a Greek rational worldview in the Jewish culture. This document as a history is, guess what? A pishat document, a Greek rational document. What were they looking for? They were looking for more Tabbits, more Judiths, more of those kind of documents, even though they rejected them too. But that was the kind of document they were looking for in this time. They weren't looking for Greek-style rational history. The Maccabees, as I told you, made treaties with the Greeks, the Romans, and the Egyptians. If you're fighting against them and trying to lead revolts, remember the revolts? There was the Zealot revolt in about 6 AD, I believe, that was led by Joshua, Judas the Zealot, whoever that guy was. And then there was the revolt in 70 AD, basically, which ended in the destruction of the temple. And then there's the other revolt in 125 AD, which resulted in pretty much the third and great diaspora of the Jewish people. So, if you're revolting against a group, boy, you sure don't want a document that says, oh, we made treaties and alliances with them. Okay? For example, Daniel talks about that evil eagle in the, I think it's evil eagle in the west, right? Which some people interpret to mean Rome, and some people interpret to mean Greece, and some people interpret to mean United States, depending on what day of the week it is. But, you know, if Rome is that evil group and you're fighting them, it sure is embarrassing to have a historical document written by Jewish rabbis that says, oh, we invited these guys in. They're not interlopers, they're our buds. they just decided to stick. It clearly states that the two Maccabees, Jonathan and Simon, were high priests and also king of Israel. So if you're trying to fight out or get rid of messianic ideas, you don't want the idea that the people accepted messiahs, right? Get rid of it. The Maccabees, as I said, were not of the family of Aaron, and they were not of the family of David. So they couldn't be high priests and king. That's also an embarrassing claim. So you made a Messiah out of a group that, or a guy that shouldn't have been at all. Now that was the argument that the Pharisees and the Sadducees continued to make, although they didn't gain any traction on it. Are there issues with First Maccabees? There are no issues. It is great history. Josephus, as I said, used it to write his history of the Jews. It is worth reading. When you read it, it's also good to have another history, kind of a consolidated history beside you so you can kind of see how it fits. Because then you can do some, look, isn't it confusing to read some of these old historical documents, right? Yeah, even the Old Testament documents kind of get confusing sometimes. Well, they do. So in any case, it's always good to have some kind of, whatever beside it. And plus, you guys have read, either force-fed or read, or you've read it yourself, Genesis, Exodus, all these books, right? Through your life, you've studied them. How many of you guys have studied First Maccabees? So you know anything about it, right? Now you know what Genesis is about, so you don't get lost too bad. But you don't know anything about First Maccabees. So the first time you read it, it may be a little confusing. But it's worth reading. It's a great document. There are about 20-something allusions. I think I should hit a couple of these. I don't want to hit every one of them because I want to move on to the other stuff. But now the 15th day of Chislev, I don't know what that is. I think that's a month. In one of the that's not a Jewish month, by the way. In the 145th year, they erected a desolating sacrilege on the altar of burnt offering. They also built altars in the surrounding towns of Judah. This is the desolation of abomination, right?
Who is the they?
Who's they?
They are the Seleucid Empire.
Okay.
When, who was that guy? Anyway. It's one of the Antioch. There's like 4 or 5 of these guys.
Fourth one.
Yeah.
Antioch is fourth.
I think you're right. See, I didn't bring all my notes, and good, thank you. But yeah, it's one of the Antiochus dudes, and basically, what they did is I gave you a short synopsis. They came in and, well, I should have drawn the picture. I should have brought you the picture. Picture this for me, okay? In a pagan temple, where is the altar? I don't know if you can see this.
Middle.
What's that?
Middle.
In a pagan temple, the altar is always outside.
Why?
I'll tell you in a second. Where's the God in a pagan temple? Inside. The God is always inside. The temple is always outside.
The altar.
The altar. The altar is always outside of a Greek temple. Always. No blood ever goes into, no animal, live animal, no blood ever goes into a Greek or pagan, any pagan temple. Ever.
That's a good idea.
That would be an abomination to the gods. See? What you do is you sacrifice, if you sacrifice, you sacrifice the animal here, then you cook the meat and you eat some and you send some to the god. And I don't have time to get into all this stuff about what you do with gods, but anyway, basically that's the way it works. In the Jewish temple, where's the altar? Inside. You got the Holy of Holies, you got the holy place, and you got the altar. Inside the temple. How do you think every pagan nation views the Jews?
Sacrilege.
As abomination of sacrilege. That's right. So what they did whenever they conquered the Jews is they first wiped out this wall called the Metaclesion in Greek. So Metaclesion, they wiped that wall because that meant there was no longer a temple around the altar. And then they would put an altar on top of the altar because this altar was not the proper kind of altar. And what they would do is that they would sacrifice on that altar. Guess what they would sacrifice? Swine. They like swine. So to the pagans, to the Greeks, what the Jews did was an abomination. But what the pagans then did to the Jews was an abomination. See? I mean, we always want to look at it from a one-sided view, right? This isn't the one-sided, guys. You know, if you were to conquer, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that are pretty heinous, but you know, to a religious culture, when all these cultures are very strongly religious, when you're doing things that they consider abominable, they go fix it. Well, they fixed it. They put an altar to Zeus on top of the altar in the temple, destroyed the Metaclesian, the wall that prevented your entry, and then they began to do burnt offerings on it. And that is what is called the abomination of desolation. And by the way, it's talked about in the New Testament. Matthew says, so when you see the desolating sacrilege standing in the holy place, as was spoken of by the prophet Daniel, guess what? It already happened. This is not, you know, we think this is a prophecy. This is not a prophecy. This happened. The abomination of desolation. So what Christ is saying here is, it's already happened. Do you get it? See? Because Maccabees told us, look, it's the same words. Isn't it? The desolating sacrifice. This is from the Greek, right from the Greek. Look what Christ said. The desolating sacrilege. Same words. And look at this in Mark. So when you see the desolating sacrilege set up where it not ought to be, it already happened. This is a quote from Maccabees. It's called an allusion. It's an allusion from Maccabees. So it already happened. The abomination of desolation has happened. You don't have to wait for it. It's there. It happened in Maccabees, but because you didn't read Maccabees, well, every Christian before 1826 knew this, or even a lot of Jews who read it knew it. But modern era, we don't know any of this. Far be it from us to desert the law and the ordinances. And Peter took him aside and said, and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid, Lord, you must never happen to you. You know, some of these allusions, like I said, you have to read in the Greek to really get the thing. Let's see. Here's a good one. Then he and his sons fled to the hills and left that which they had in the town. But then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. The one on the housetop must not go down to take what's in the house. The one in the field must not turn back to get a coat. This already happened. So that's a quote, basically from Maccabees in Matthew. Was not Abraham found faithful when tested, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness? Hebrews says, by faith Abraham, when put to the test, offered up Isaac. He who had received up the promises was ready to offer up his only son. And basically goes on to say that his faith was counted to righteousness, right? We've heard this before. You know, I think I've mentioned this before. We think the New Testament was written in a vacuum. It wasn't. All these documents, and we're going to see next week, even pagan documents are included in the New Testament documents. Quotes, pagan quotes. We know where some of them came from. But if you find pagan quotes in it, why wouldn't you expect quotes from the Apocrypha? Let's see, there's lots of this stuff. Let's see if there's any other really good one here. I don't know. Jerusalem was uninhabited like the wilderness. Not one of her children went in or out. The sanctuary was trampled down, and aliens held the citadel. It was a lodging place for the Gentiles. Joy was taken from Jacob, the flute, etc., etc. And then in Luke we see, they will fall on the edge of the sword to be taken away as captives among all the nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. It's a quote from Maccabees. In any case, let's see, anything else real important? There's a lot of stuff, you know, I just don't have time to go through all.